There's a lot of Filipinos. I love the atmosphere here. So honored to be lifting this trophy today. Lifting this trophy does not mean that I will be among the greats. I am motivated to keep
one number. That is all that stands between Alexandra Eala and something no Filipino tennis player has ever done. Not 10 places. Not 5. One single ranking spot. She is currently sitting at world number 33. The Grand Slam seeding cutoff is number 32. And in roughly 2 weeks, when the All England club closes its seeding window for the 2026 Wimbledon Championships, the line between unseeded and seeded, between ordinary and historic, will be drawn by whatever happens on grass over the next 14 days. It's really nice to start the tournament on one side and finish it on the other. This is not a fan's dream. This is not a hypothetical scenario constructed for content. This is the current mathematical reality of a 21-year-old from the Philippines. As she walks onto the grass at Queen's Club this week, everything compresses down to a single match, a single result, a single ranking point moving in the right direction. That is the entire margin separating her from history. If you have followed her, since the days she was ranked somewhere around 140, since the Miami run, since the Eastbourne final, then you already understand the trajectory. But the only context that truly matters right now is what has already happened and where it has left her standing. In March of this year, Eala reached a career-high ranking of world number 29. That number sits comfortably inside the top 32. She has already proven she can break through that threshold. But rankings do not hold still. They breathe, shift, and respond to results. By June, following a first-round exit at Roland Garros and the relentless churn of the WTA calendar, she had slipped to number 33, just one position outside that seeding cutoff. The Birmingham title 2 weeks ago helped close part of the gap. Now the remaining ground has to be earned in real time, on grass, against opponents who have absolutely no interest in helping her take that final step. This is not a biography. It is not a comeback arc. It is a single ranking number, a single cutoff, and 14 days of grass court tennis that will either confirm what this season has been building toward or push the moment back until next year. What she has in front of her begins at Queen's Club, the HSBC Championships. Now the flagship of the women's grass season, one of the most prestigious stops on the entire calendar. This is where the seeding push truly begins. Elena Rybakina is the top seed. Amanda Anisimova is seeded second. Emma Raducanu is also in the draw. Eala, ranked 29th on the entry list, has drawn a qualifier in the first round. On paper, that looks manageable. In reality, it is anything but simple. Win that opening match, and the projected path leads directly into Eva Liss in the second round. The same Eva Liss who defeated her at Roland Garros just 11 days ago, 6-4, 6-2 in straight sets. The same player Eala has publicly described as a close friend. The same opponent who handed her that first-round Grand Slam exit that still has not been answered. And beyond Liss, the bracket potentially opens toward Amanda Anisimova herself. A Wimbledon finalist. The second seed, for a reason. One of the cleanest ball strikers in the women's game. That is the path. A qualifier first. Then possibly the player who just beat her on clay. Then, if she survives that, one of the most dangerous players on any surface. This is not a comfortable seeding push. It is a test. A real one. Stepping back makes the picture even sharper and even more remarkable. 12 months ago, Alexandra Eala was ranked outside the top 140. By March 2025, following a Miami Open run that included a quarterfinal victory over the world number 2, she broke into the top 100 for the first time in her career, becoming the first Filipino player, male or female, ever to reach that milestone. By September 2025, she was inside the top 75. By the end of 2025, she had claimed her first professional title in Guadalajara and broken into the top 50. By March 2026, she reached world number 29, a career high, and became the first Filipino player in history to enter the WTA top 30. That is the velocity of her rise. From outside the top 140 to inside the top 30 in 12 months, across multiple surfaces, against multiple top 10 opponents. The trajectory has not been linear. It has been a sequence of breakthroughs, brief pauses, and sudden accelerations that keep catching the rankings off guard. And the next threshold is sitting right there at number 32. The Birmingham Open 2 weeks ago is the clearest window into what that acceleration actually looks like in practice. 6 days after a straight sets loss to Liss at Roland Garros. 6 days after a Grand Slam defeat that most 21-year-olds would still be quietly processing. Eala stepped onto the grass at Edgbaston Priory Club and immediately set the tone. She won her opening set in 22 minutes. 6-0. Across her first 3 matches of the tournament, she did not drop a single set. In the final against Czech opponent Nikola Bardankova, she went the full distance, 6-2, 4-6, 6-3, sealing her second WTA 125 title and her first ever on grass. That title produced 76 ranking points, enough to move her from world number 37 to world number 33, 1 spot outside the top 32. The math is not abstract. It is visible, updated week by week, fixed on a live rankings page that the entire tennis world can read. But the top 32 cutoff is not the only layer that shapes Wimbledon seeding. That is where this story gets more interesting. Wimbledon is the only Grand Slam that modifies its seeding formula. On the women's side, WTA rankings remain the primary input, but the All England Club Seeding Committee has historically retained limited discretion, occasionally factoring in grass court performance when finalizing seedings. Over the years, players ranked in the high 20s to low 30s have shifted across that seeding line based specifically on their results on grass in the lead-up season. And that is exactly where the conversation narrows back to what Eala has actually built on the surface. Eastbourne 2025. She reached the final, losing a tight 3-set match to one of the tour's most experienced grass court players. Wimbledon 2025. She made her main draw debut. Birmingham 2026. She claimed the title without dropping a set across 3 matches before a rain-delayed 3-set final. That is a genuine grass court resume, built in under 12 months, by a player who developed her entire game on the clay courts of the Rafa Nadal Academy. A player ranked 33 with no grass pedigree sits on the edge of seeding consideration and nothing more. But a player ranked 33 who has reached an Eastbourne final, debuted in Wimbledon's main draw, and lifted the Birmingham title. That is a different kind of borderline. That is a player actively making the committee's decision easier with every match she plays. The market was tracking this before the rankings were. Sky Sports lead tennis presenter Gigi Salmon said at a public industry event in London earlier this year, carefully framed not as flattery but as market observation, that in terms of appeal and the crowd she attracts, Eala might already be the biggest star in women's tennis. She recalled the atmosphere at Eala's Dubai matches earlier in 2026, when she was still ranked outside the top 40. The energy inside those arenas, Salmon said, felt less like a tennis match and more like a pop concert. That kind of atmosphere does not appear by accident for a player ranked outside the top 40. It signals something happening ahead of the rankings, not behind them. It signals a market that is already seeing what the points table has not yet fully validated. Kim Clijsters, 4-time Grand Slam champion, former world number 1, someone with no nationalistic incentive to elevate a Filipino player, went on Andy Roddick's podcast and reached for an analogy that stopped the conversation. Michael Jordan in the Philippines. That is how Clijsters described Eala's cultural position inside her own country. And then she added one more word. The word that carried the most weight in that sentence. She said Eala has to be protected like a big star. In the context of a Hall of Fame champion, protected is not casual praise. It is a precise description. A player whose cultural footprint has already grown past her ranking. A player the sport needs to actively position. A player like that eventually receives her seeding when the numbers catch up. In this case, the numbers are closing in fast. What sits behind these next 2 weeks is larger than any single tournament. No Filipino player has ever been seeded at a Grand Slam in the Open era. Not in men's tennis. Not in women's tennis. Not in singles. Not once. The Philippines, a nation of roughly 115 million people, with a diaspora of nearly 10 million more spread across the United States, the Gulf, Europe, and East Asia, has never seen representation at that level across the entire professional history of this sport. The number of Filipino players seeded at any of the 4 Grand Slams is 0. A seeding line at a Grand Slam is not a trophy. It will not appear on a career resume the way a title does. But it is a structural marker. It signals the moment a national tennis program shifts from producing good players to producing players the sport actively positions. That shift has real consequences. It affects draws, reshapes scheduling patterns, and changes conversations happening inside tennis federations across Southeast Asia about what is genuinely achievable from this region. The schedule from here is clear. After Queen's Club, Eala has confirmed a wild card at the Bad Homburg Open from June 21st to 27th, the exact same week the Wimbledon seedings are finalized. Reports suggest she may also partner with Venus Williams in doubles during that period. Then comes Wimbledon's main draw in late June, where her name could appear in the seeded section if the rankings break in her favor. At that point, every tournament that has tracked her rise this season will be watching closely to see whether the seeding translates into the deep run it is designed to protect and predict. The narrative is already in motion. The results will determine how far it extends. Queen's Club, Bad Homburg, Wimbledon. 3 tournaments. 1 cutoff. 1 piece of history sitting on the other side of it. There is an honest layer to this story that has to be stated clearly because it matters. She has not fully arrived yet. And the recent record reflects that reality, without apology. At Roland Garros, just 11 days ago, Eala suffered her 2nd consecutive Grand Slam first-round exit of 2026. The Australian Open in January ended the same way. The narrative around her seeding push and her upward trajectory has to exist alongside that fact. 2 Grand Slams in 2026. 2 opening round losses. That is what the world number 33 ranking actually captures when you look at it honestly. When asked about the Roland Garros defeat in her post-match press conference, Eala did not offer a long, reflective answer. In the same calm, restrained tone she has carried through every interview since she was 16 years old, she simply said she would keep working. 6 days later, she opened her Birmingham campaign with a 6-0 first set in 22 minutes. The response was not philosophical. It was operational. And that more than anything else is what defines her temperament. The ability to absorb a Grand Slam loss on one week and win a grass court title the next without appearing to carry the weight of either moment too long. She's been told repeatedly, by rankings, by seedings, by Grand Slam draws, that she is not yet fully in the conversation. She keeps walking into it anyway. And she keeps taking a seat. So this is what the story is actually about. It is about a 21-year-old from the Philippines who spent the last 12 months turning a number 140 ranking into a career-high number 29, and who now sits at number 33 with 1 step remaining before Wimbledon decides who it places inside the bracket and who it leaves outside it. It is about a Queen's Club draw that leads, through a qualifier, then through the player who recently beat her at Roland Garros, then potentially through one of the most dangerous names in women's tennis. It is about an Eastbourne final, a Wimbledon main draw debut, and a Birmingham title that together form the grass court resume her seeding case now rests on. It is about a Sky Sports presenter describing a Dubai crowd as feeling like a pop concert for a player ranked outside the top 40. It is about a 4-time Grand Slam champion reaching for the phrase Michael Jordan in the Philippines just to explain what a country of more than 100 million people sees when this player walks onto a court. But more than any of that, it is about a number. 1. That is the distance between Alexandra Eala and a seeding line that no Filipino player in the Open era has ever crossed. The math says she belongs there. The grass resume says she belongs there. The results across Eastbourne, Birmingham, and the wider grass swing say she belongs in that conversation. And so do the crowds, those rising, reactive, unmistakably present crowds in Dubai, Birmingham, and every stop this season where her matches have started to feel less like routine tour fixtures and more like events people circle on a calendar weeks in advance. What makes this moment different is not one breakthrough result. It is accumulation. A season where every surface change, every draw, Every opponent has added another layer of evidence that she is no longer outside the system looking in. She is inside it, pushing against its edges from within. The only thing left is 14 days of tennis to confirm what the season has already been quietly signaling. When the Wimbledon seeding list is released, the question will not be whether she has become a story. That part is already settled. The question will be whether the system formally acknowledges it. If the ranking holds, if Queen's Club delivers another data point, if the grass results are weighted the way they appear to be trending, then her name does not arrive on that list as a shock. It arrives as an acknowledgement, a correction that took a full season to become unavoidable. And if she is on that list, the impact is not just personal. It is structural. Because somewhere in Manila, somewhere in Cebu, and in Filipino communities scattered across Dubai and Toronto and London and Los Angeles, a child will open the Wimbledon draw and see a name from their country printed in the seeded section of a Grand Slam for the first time in history. Not in qualifiers. Not in the chaos of the early draw. In the protected space the sport reserves for its established names. That is the moment this entire narrative has been quietly building toward. Not the trophy, not yet. Not the final chapter of a career. The moment recognition catches up to trajectory. The seeding. The country will understand exactly what that means the moment it sees her name on the Wimbledon draw sheet. The real question now belongs in the comments. Does she make the seeding cutoff in time? And if she does, how far does she actually go at Wimbledon? First Filipino seeded. First Filipino into the second week. First real answer to the question this entire season has been building toward. Where is the ceiling? If you have been watching Alexandra Eala since the number 140 ranking, since Miami, since Eastbourne, since Birmingham, then none of this feels sudden. It feels like a timeline finally catching up to itself. 12 months of signals, results, and pressure points all converging on a single ranking threshold that now decides placement, protection, and expectation. Stay subscribed. The seeding announcement, the Bad Homburg draw, and the Wimbledon main draw are the next 3 checkpoints in this run. And each one carries exactly the same underlying question. Is this finally the moment tennis stops projecting her future and starts placing her inside its present? Because if her name appears in that seeded section, it changes more than one player's path through a tournament. It changes how a country sees itself inside the sport. And then the real test begins. Not the conversation around her anymore. The matches themselves.